I'm Julie Eggleston, and I am the Vice President HR Operations at Bankers Trust. So we have a lot of locations here in the Des Moines Metro, also in surrounding communities. We're in South Dakota, we are in Nebraska, and we're also in Phoenix. In HR operations, I'm responsible for a lot of the processes, procedures in HR, but also in addition to that, I serve on our crisis management committee, who has been very involved in a lot of the things that we're doing around coronavirus.
Great. Nola, you're last up.
My name is Nola Cartmill, and I'm a partner at Bell & McCormick, which is a law firm in downtown Des Moines. We represent a lot of employers from to national companies, and we've been doing a lot of advice and counseling regarding employment and HR concerns that have arisen out of the COVID-19 scenario, including how to get back to work, how do you handle employees who need to be on leave, just a variety of different issues.
Great. Just a reminder to everybody, for the folks who joined us late, just remember to mute yourself as we're kind of going through this, because we were picking up some background noise, so I appreciate that. Okay, so first question. The three sort of areas that we've talked about, just to kind of give you a flavor of what's to come in the next half hour or so. Well, we've got three major areas that we're kind of going to go through. The first area is the area of cleaning. The second has to do with facilities specifically, and then operations is sort of the third bucket, in HR sort of goes a little bit in terms of what we're going to kind of talk about. So first topic goes to service master. So from a cleaning perspective, what are some protocols that might be recommended for firm-wide use or alternatives to that? Copiers, coffee machines, equipment, manuals. What are some things that people should be considering as they're going back into an office situation?
Yeah, thank you. A lot of businesses are a lot of the same, and they have a lot of the same tools that we're all using as far as computers or phones or whatever those might be. So we took the liberty to create kind of a standard checklist to send out to folks, so that way they can kind of follow that and then also build on it as well too, to allow them to kind of customize that to their business and where they're at. Paula, do you have anything you want to add?
No, you hit it on the nail, Cole. Basically we have those touch points. Those are the most critical things. So, yeah, I mean, you hit it, you covered it.
Great.
All right. Should firms consider installation of like wipes dispensers throughout a workspace, like a fitness center for use after conference room tables, other surfaces? What are some protocols that people may not have thought about before all this took place that they should be thinking about now in that regard?
Paula, do you want to answer that?
After every use, I would wipe things down. After you're done using it, take care of it, just wipe it down. That way it's good for the next person. If you're going to use that item, wipe it down before you use it so you're not cross-contaminating. Just being mindful of that stuff. We're not used to that. Just taking that extra precautionary of wiping things down before you use it, or yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think it's best to just kind of refer back, and I'm sure Brandon's going to talk a lot about this pertaining to the CDC, but just understanding exactly how the virus spreads person to person and what best actions you can take to making sure that you're taking the right steps to provide a safe environment, not only for yourself, but for the employees, by using masks or, hand sanitizers, or washing your hands for at least 20 seconds when you guys are doing things. And again, like Paul had said, making sure you're understanding what you're touching, and maybe there's a way for you to have some best practices as well when it comes to sterilizing your work centers or places that you're currently working around within your business.
Great. And to the group, if you have questions about cleaning specifically, as we're kind of moving through this topic, don't hesitate to type them into the chat. Next question. Are there any new cleaning or sanitary requirements from the federal, state, or local officials? And if not, what are some best practices that people might consider?
Yeah. So, you know, obviously we've been getting a lot of phone calls asking a lot about the services that we require or that we serve. And with that being said, you know, we have couple of upfront conversations with people just to kind of understand exactly what's going on, whether they've had an affected person that's been in their business, if they're concerned and looking for a deeper clean process, or, you know, if they are currently using a janitorial service. I'm sure Pollard would be happy to go into more detail on all of that.
Yeah, so understanding what the client wants and kind of their scope of work, you know, we look at the CDC website every day just to make sure that we're in compliance with some of the protocols, as well as watching the EPA registered product list, just to make sure that something didn't fall off that we're using. You know, the products that we use are a Service Master product. One we clean with, and then the second one is another product that we fog with. So some of the recommendations for cleaning is basically, you know, cleaning, you know, the walls no more than 10 feet high, cleaning all horizontal surfaces, cleaning your critical touch point areas, and then we apply a disinfectant. The best application is to clean your surfaces before fogging or applying a disinfectant, just so it actually has its full effect. So those are some of the requirements. You know, each building's different. Each, you know, you've got office settings, you've got industrial, you've got manufacturing. So each building is different, and we try to accommodate the client on what their needs are and what they're needing.
We had a question come in from Carrie while you guys were talking. So what it says is, can Cole explain the difference between cleaning if you have a positive case or just deep cleaning for a precaution? Cole, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, you know, this would be a great question for Patrick.
Yeah, so really it comes down to, you know, if it's a preventative cleaning, we don't clean the walls. We still do the cleaning and disinfectant. We leave the walls out, but we still do your horizontal surfaces. And we kind of rely on the client on exactly what you want done. We'll give our suggestions and our recommendations. Some clients only want the desktops cleaned. Some want them, you know, the mice and the keyboards and the screens cleaned, the telephones cleaned. So, you know, we still use the same products when it's a preventative clean. We may not go in a full white Tyvek suit. We still wear full face respirators to protect our people. One, against the products that we're using. Two, it's just really safe for our people. We still wear gloves. So really the only difference is maybe taking out the walls and some of the cleaning touch points and stuff that the client doesn't want done. So.
Pollard, what do you think about, you know, the use of our hydroxyls or, you know,
Yeah.
through clean rooms? Like, how has our operations changed just to be able to keep our people safe and things safe within our buildings?
Yeah, so basically, on a confirmed case, we have a designated area for all our supplies and where we enter and exit the building. So we're not cross-contaminating with our people. When we put our Tyvek on or our equipment, and when we take it off, we properly dispose of it. So we're not cross-contaminating anything. We also clean all our equipment, clean our vans. We have clean rooms that we set up if needed. So, and then the products, again, the products are very, very important. All the products that we use are green product. They still do what they're supposed to do, but they're environmentally safe. That's key, because a lot of people are worried that if we come in with a sanitizer or a disinfectant, it's going to change the color of the carpet, the furniture, the surfaces that it's being applied to. And the products that we use does not do that. So.
Thank you.
Great. Next question. What can businesses and organizations do to minimize the risk of viral transfer when team members go back to the office? In addition to good hygiene requirements, enhanced cleaning, et cetera, what are some other things businesses can do?
I think it just comes down to just kind of pivoting to the new normal, you know, limiting the amount of handshakes and hugs that you're given when you're seeing your coworkers that you're working with on a day-to-day basis. You know, the masks are huge, you know, making sure that you're covering your mouth. Also, you know, if you're not feeling well, stay home. That's one of the key things that I want to share with people the most, is because a lot of folks don't know if they're suffering from COVID-19 or not. So it's a matter of fact of people just staying home and doing the correct steps to not infect anybody else. Paula, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I agree with everything you said, so I'm good.
Great.
We're going to get to some of those items in the operational side of things too.
Yep.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So switching gears right now to facilities, talking to some of our IMAG folks. Are there any new building code updates as it relates to the health, safety, and welfare of the public?
Right, this is Andy Thielen. Hi. No, not, as far as new building codes, no, there haven't been any of those that have been done or updated at this point. However, there are committees that I think there will be code changes that come out of all of this. Now there are different organizations like the American Water Works and ASHRAE that do give out different guidelines about what kind of things that you can do within your facility to decrease the amount of infection rate, just to kind of keep the building disinfected.
Next question. How can facilities managers and building engineers help to slow the spread and limit the transmission of the viruses? From a facilities management standpoint, what should we be looking at from building engineering standpoint?
Yeah, there's about 4 or 5 different things that we were looking at that you can do here. One of them is increasing the outside air through your HVAC system, bringing in, most people, the building brings in a minimum amount of outside air because it takes energy and money to condition that air. So by increasing that and flushing out the building more, you're generally going to provide a healthier environment. Another item is upgrading the filters that you have in your air handling equipment. The virus obviously is very small, so the filters aren't going to catch everything, but the higher quality the filter is, the more dust, the more airborne particles, things like that will be caught, which is going to help. You do have to keep in mind that when you do increase some of that, those higher efficiency filters, it makes it harder to push air through them. And so having equipment, making sure that it can overcome that additional resistance. Otherwise, we're going to have an airflow drop, and then we're going to end up with creating other issues. Another item that's talked about quite a little bit is using UV lights in air handling units. The UV lights, right now a lot of facilities have them. Healthcare facilities, it's common for them to have UV lights in them to help keep the heating and cooling coils clean and free of mold and bacteria. These can be effective as well in as far as the virus goes. However, you do have to make sure that they are powerful enough to be effective. A lot of them that are installed right now are only there for the mold and bacteria growth on filters. So they may not be strong enough to be effective as far as killing the viruses. Another item that we've been looking at, or this is kind of one, and maybe Cole or Patrick can talk a little on this too, but there's been information out about the handheld wands that people have and that you can take and put over a desk, over a keyboard, on a cell phone. And generally the information that I'm seeing there is that they're really not effective, that they're not powerful enough, or in order for them to be effective, you have to set the device on your keyboard and leave it there for 10 to 12 hours or longer to really do anything. So kind of how they advertise of taking a wand over a keyboard and saying, boom, it's disinfected is really not the case that way.
We had a question come in from Alex. So it says, the governor just released a new website called testiowa.com for voluntary testing. Do office managers strongly recommend employees to enter information at this website?
I'm not familiar with that one yet. Can anybody else speak to that?
I can give a quick answer personally, but then Julie, I don't know if you have anything in your role. Obviously, it just came out today. The governor of Iowa is asking all individuals in the state to fill out an assessment. The assessment will then help determine if you're where you land on the testing scale to determine if you should qualify for a drive-through testing facility that they're opening. She's encouraging everyone to fill out the information as a way to get better data to see who's sick, how many folks are kind of dealing with the situation. I've actually filled out the survey myself today. It took about 4 minutes, but for our company, I have not talked to our leadership team to decide if we should roll that out And I think that's going to be a business by business decision. However, it does seem in general like the more information we can get, probably the better for everybody. So that's just my quick take as this has come out as of, I think, 11 o'clock today. So Julie, you might have some more information from Bankers Trust.
And like you said, Brandon, it is so new that we haven't really talked about it as a larger organization, if that is something that we wouldn't require, or if we will even encourage at this point. I think right now it would still be limited testing. So like you said, they're gauging, do they think that they should or shouldn't be tested because there are only so many. I think it's a great opportunity for those that might not be feeling well or might be concerned that they have it, or a family member might have it. I think it's a great opportunity for them to get tested. But at this point, we haven't talked about rolling it out to our employees or, doing a big push for them to do it.
Great.
And
Next
this is
question.
Nola. Oh, I just wanted to hop in real quick in terms of from a legal perspective. I think that you want to be careful. It is very new, and I haven't really sort of looked at this yet, but we might get to a question later about, taking temperatures. I think you want to be careful that with the ADA that you're not requiring employees to get a test, and you want to make sure that you consult with legal counsel and make sure if you're rolling this out. I would at this point only be recommending encouraging employees to do it rather than requiring employees to do it, but I'd have to look into it further to see if you could in fact require your employees to do so.
Nola, that's a really good point. And also, since you're an attorney, I think we should follow your guidance. But the interesting part is it's actually an assessment more than it is a test. It's an assessment that leads you to potentially qualifying for a test. So the name on the website is a bit misleading. And that's why I think the governor's asking for everybody to take the assessment on the site so they can get data of who's healthy, who has symptoms, that kind of a thing. But again, good points there. Each organization is going to want to determine their own criteria for what they enforce or what they ask or suggest. Nola just kind of gave us the right feedback there. So,
Andy, I got a question for you. When we were talking about the hydroxyls and using the UV lights, and you guys are installing those, like you said, in water fountains or in HVAC systems, is that something you guys can implement into existing businesses, or is that more on the design aspect for moving forward?
No, they definitely can be retrofitted, both from a standpoint of within existing units. We'd have to look at them and make sure that they'll work. But yes, we've actually had a couple of clients of ours that have already contacted us to do that, to put them in. And then the other one is the kind of the point of use ones over drinking fountains, things on that order. Obviously they're not as powerful, but they're on all the time. So they're a great way to supplement, in addition to the wiping down and everything that you're looking at, to give an additional level of disinfecting there.
Yeah, definitely on that day-to-day basis, definitely.
Right.
Great. Moving on to the next question. Because some buildings have been sitting empty for a period of time, are there things that need to be done to get the building ready to house occupants again?
Yeah, Eric, you want to go ahead and answer this?
Sure. I guess one of the main things that comes to mind when looking at this is if we've had buildings that have been sitting stagnant or basically vacant for weeks or even months by the time we get to the end of this and people get back into the office, is water quality. It's something that you go and turn the faucet on or flush the toilet. You don't really think about very much in your every day-to-day use of a building, but if a building's been sitting around for a while not being used, that water's been sitting in the pipes and being stagnant. And just as kind of a general guideline, regular use of plumbing fixtures kind of helps promote water quality in that building. Every time you turn on the faucet, you're bringing in new water from the utility, and that water is already treated with chlorine and other disinfectants in it that kind of help keep that system clean. If you don't have water movement in the system, it can kind of lead to nasty stuff building up in the pipes, bacteria and other things, not necessarily the coronavirus or COVID, but other stuff that can make you sick. So, one thing to keep in mind as if your building's been vacant for a long time is, as you get ready to reoccupy that, think about the different systems that are in that building, the water system specifically, and going through the building and flushing the fixtures is probably a good idea, just to make sure that it's ready for your regular building usage.
Next question. Can the coronavirus be spread through a building's HVAC or mechanical system?
Yeah, I'll kind of take this, and then Eric, if you want to supplement it a little bit. But in general, the thought is no, that it can't. The thought process behind it is that the airflow is moving, it's moving pretty slow. And as far as carrying it that far, when they say that just kind of in general, that it settles out with gravity in that 6-foot range. If you think about a typical building, and there's hundreds and hundreds of feet of ductwork for the air to transfer through. So the general thought behind it is no, it wouldn't be distributed throughout the building.
Andy, this is Eric. Nothing really to add there. You mentioned it kind of before with the filters and UV lights. There are measures in the HVAC system that help protect against that. Certainly not to eliminate it, but based on the research we've seen, it's not anticipated to be going through HVAC systems to a great extent.
All right, as we move into our last question for the facilities before moving into operations, I just want to remind everybody, if they have any questions, to go ahead and type them in. Last question for the IMEG guys before we move to operations. Are there any new OSHA guidelines pertaining to COVID-19?
There are. If you go to the actually the CDC website and a couple other of them, they do point you to different guidelines that OSHA has put out. And in general, a lot of it comes back to the safety of the employees and the disinfecting. A lot of the stuff that Cole and Patrick had talked about is what a lot of it pertains to. And just kind of in general about how you operate your facility. And there's a great article on there as far as going through, and it talks about the different types of businesses, whether you're everything from a daycare to a school to an office building. So it's a great guideline as far as going through and reviewing what might be pertinent for your particular circumstance.
All right, thank you. Just moving ahead to operations a little bit, got some questions here as well. So give some thought to your own company's operations and some things you'd like to pick these guys' brains about as we're kind of going through this stuff. First question for them: what consideration should companies give to travel and meetings outside of the office, not just within the workplace or online?
Well, I can take this one, I think, here, Joe. One, you can continue to allow folks to meet virtually as long as possible. I think each organization and everybody on the call is going to have a little bit of a different impact to the potential to meet in person or meet virtually. Everybody also has different technologies and potential different technology systems. So each organization and business is going to have to evaluate that. But I think what we're seeing with our clients and what we're doing internally is we're continuing to recommend at least the option for virtual, even when you might be in an essential industry, and definitely just providing that flexibility for folks that are at high risk or have underlying health conditions. So we would recommend you continue to provide a virtual alternative as you move forward.
I guess the next question kind of blurs the line between operations and HR a little bit. So all the panelists feel free to kind of chime in here a little bit. But does the recent pandemic and the things that we've all had to adapt to psychologically and just with all the environmental considerations, are we finding that work from home is a viable way to do a distributed office or have a workplace strategy? Talk a little bit about working from home and how that seems to be working out for people.
This is Julie. I was going to say at Bankers Trust, this is something that we had been working on before the pandemic and talking about because we know it's so important to our employees and our candidates. And I think it turned some people from being nervous about it and thinking about how could this work to actually creating solutions because we had to make it work. And so, realizing that some of these paperless or paper processes that we had could become paperless, and that you could have some of that interaction that you have in person on Zoom calls, on WebEx. Some, departments feel like they are more engaged with their team than they were before just because you know, you might be meeting more often. You're kind of learning probably more a little bit about people just by, you know, being welcomed into their homes. So I think that some people that were originally, I don't want to say against it, but uncomfortable with it, have learned to embrace it. And so that's been a great change to watch.
This is Brandon. I just add that I think what we're finding over the last 4 to 6 weeks is that for most companies, they had some form of a work from home or flex work environment. It's pretty common as technology's improved. Folks have really looked for that when they've taken on career opportunities at different organizations. So with that said, it's definitely viable for this short-term period. But what I would caution or like to study more is how viable is it long-term? What are the mental, emotional impacts and well-being impacts that could be there for not being in the office? Is it something that becomes a part-time structure, part-time in office, part-time out office? Obviously, right now, many folks that are working from home may have children they're taking care of. So there could be additional stresses. There could be additional financial stresses right now. So there's so much to study before I think anybody would say that it is a viable opportunity or viable option long-term as just a general blanket statement. I do think it shows that technology works and people can get through this. And it'll be interesting to see when people have the option to work from home versus that they're forced to work from home or their companies requested they work from home, what that changes. And if folks would gravitate toward businesses where they can work in the office or businesses that work virtually. And I'm sure you'd have some on both sides of the scale, but there's going to be a lot more data and research there. So I think, yes, it's proving that the technology we have today makes this situation much more possible than it would have 5 or 10 years ago. But I don't think anybody can really truly say that it is a truly as viable or as productive as we were working in the office.
This is Nola. I just want to hop in. I agree with what Julie and Brandon have said. I think that that we were more capable of it than probably a lot of people thought we were. The one thing I would note in my experience just at my own workplace is that I think we're seeing a lot less collaboration in terms of just small collaboration. And I think that the work product, at least for a legal atmosphere, may suffer a little bit from not being able to just pop by somebody's office and run something by them real quick. You might not hop on a Zoom call or call someone up to ask them something that you know, on your way back to the restroom might ask them if you were in an office setting. So I think that we're more capable of working from home than we probably thought we were from a technology standpoint. I think when people go back, even though it's been, you know, for a lot of people more seamless than they thought it would be, I would caution against just going to a work from home on a regular basis all the time.
I had a question come in. Nola, maybe you can start us off on this one. With associates starting to come back into buildings, how are others addressing, or how should folks think about addressing not crowding into elevators, keeping social distancing, not clutching up around things? What does that look like in terms of having a purposeful and empathetic conversation around, you know, having social distancing continue on as a best practice in an office?
A lot of the things that we've talked about, I think the elevators in particular is more going to be sending out some guidance to tell people. I mean, that's people are going to have to take some personal responsibility. If you see a crowded elevator, you know, don't get in it, wait for the next one. But in terms of social distancing in the office as a whole, you know, starting to think about some of the things that you've seen in grocery stores, you know, how many people are in a restroom at one time. You might want to limit the number of people, you know, if you don't have several different spaces where people can go in, you know, provide your employees guidance that, hey, there should really only be 2 people in here at one time. Around your reception desk, you might not want to put up plexiglass, you know, sort of like you see in grocery stores, but you might want to consider, do you have dots on the floor that say where people should stand? You know, do you want to consider how many people should be in your conference rooms at one particular time, and depending on the size of it, what types of meetings can be scheduled in those types of spaces. So I really think a lot of it is just communication with your employees and even your consumers and customers and guests, and providing them with guidance on what is appropriate and doing that.
Great, thank you. We had another question come in from Jana. As in-person meetings start taking place again, are you implementing anything different both in the office and when you go to meetings outside of the office in terms of protocols. And, I think this is centered around how do you behave about social distancing in the office? How do you ask your employees to respect that protocol when they go outside of the office? I guess I would pose that maybe Julie or somebody could start us off and just talk a little bit about what that looks like moving forward.
Yep. So at Bankers Trust, we haven't told people what they can or cannot do outside of work. We think that's something that we want to communicate to them. So, based on the CDC guidelines and the World Health Organization, is what are they recommending that are social distancing and good guidelines, and communicating it to make sure that our employees understand what they can do to keep themselves safe, their family members, their coworkers. And that's how we've really approached it, is more of communicating what that would look like versus telling them they can or can't do something outside of work.
All right, great question. Just a heads up, just housekeeping. We got about 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure we end on time, being respectful for everybody's time today. So just go ahead, and I just want to remind you again to type those questions in as they come up, so that we can get to everything before the 5 o'clock hour. They'll be here before you know it. Moving into the HR sort of realm of things, one of the questions, maybe Juliana can address this as well. Privacy issues will be of a concern. Should employees have an opportunity to request accommodations to work from home further or in a protected way? If they're feeling like they need to be aware of vulnerabilities, if their vulnerabilities exist, what do those conversations look like from an HR perspective to make sure that people feel like they're safe and protected, and that their employer is being empathetic to their situation, but at the same time, the return to normalcy, or as much as normal as we can expect. So what do some of those conversations look like?
I say at Bankers Trust, we are allowing that. So as we kind of bring people in, obviously we don't want everyone to come back all at one time. We kind of want people to come gradually. So it'll be based on business need and other various factors. And one of the things that we are looking at is those that maybe from a health perspective might be more vulnerable, and working on a process where they can work with HR and their manager on requesting an accommodation. So maybe saying, can I work remotely if they have that availability, another 30, 60, 90 days, and is that feasible from a work perspective? And then we also do have a short-term disability plan, if maybe they could go down that if they were even higher risk. So we do have options for them to request those types of accommodations, and that's part of our procedures.
And I would hop in and just say that it's a lot like a regular ADA accommodation, I think, is probably the way employers should be looking at this. If someone, once people are returning to work and you're asking people to come back, if someone is in a vulnerable population, you should sort of work with them through the interactive process and try to see if there's a way that they can come back. Can you place them in a place where they're less vulnerable to other places? Do they need to work from home for a little bit longer? And really just try to work with the employee to come up with the solution that both keeps the employee safe, but also allows your business to run.
I had a question for Nola and Julie here. I know there's probably a lot of new business development people on the phone. What kind of things could they prepare for as far as, entering into other businesses and those kind of protocols, not just within our company, but out there continuing to move forward?
I'll sort of just give, I think probably I've dealt with a few questions regarding people who go into other people's businesses. I think there's probably going to be more calling ahead rather than just popping in. And so if you can call ahead and make sure that, they're fine with you coming in, schedule a time with someone as opposed to just coming in, because you want to make sure, I think a lot of employers are making sure that they sort of know who's in the building, and those types of things. And so rather than just, sort of popping in out of the blue, make sure that you have an appointment with someone. You also want to really, for your safety, check in to make sure that there haven't been any positive cases, there's no concerns, and those types of things. And I would recommend businesses who have people coming in ask the same type of questions.
Thank you.
I'd like to toss a question at Brandon. what should organizations be doing in the near term to make sure employees and customers feel comfortable and safe coming back into the office? What are some steps they can take? Brandon, are you with us?
I am here. I got to figure out where the mute button is. Sorry about that, Joe.
No, don't worry. Don't worry.
So I think that communication is key. I think a lot of these protocols and procedures, whether it's better health practices, additional cleaning, providing social distancing measures within your office, whether that's separating workstations, removing chairs, limiting people within high density and high traffic areas, those are all great. But I think the key thing is to make sure you have a communication plan with your stakeholders and the folks that might visit your office, whether that's your employees, your customers, your partners. And so I would really start there. Likely, and from looking through the list of the participants, I do know there are several of these organizations on the call that already have this, but an internal task force or team dedicated to that communication and oversight so they can evaluate how all this impacts their own business and organization. So I really think it really is around communication, posting signs, adding additional hand sanitizing stations, those kind of things are very near term. And then long term, it's probably evaluating how you actually lay out and work within an office. So I guess that'd be my thoughts on that.
Other members of the panel, any thoughts on that one?
I guess, to agree with you there, Brandon, just kind of within the workspaces, obviously a lot of the newer trends these days are more of the collaborative environments, and people are allowed to use those touch points and sit down and use wherever those were. So I would potentially predict that that's going to kind of come back a little bit and maybe kind of blend of both worlds.
Yeah, definitely. We've already talked with several groups looking at going, back to workstations that have higher panels. Remember that was lately that's been a faux pas for any design firms, furniture companies. Everybody wants to be able to see one another. Well, there may be some advantages for larger workstations with more separation. There may be advantages to phased re-entry where you have teams rotating days or weeks in the office. There may be health screening, antibody testing even. There's a lot of options out there that organizations that have the right means to do so, financially, if they can get access to some of those things, could do on their own. So yeah, we're definitely seeing that. We're personally, for our company, we're evaluating all those options now, and we're likely going to some phased reentry. And I know almost everybody that we talk to is going to some phased, scaled approach to going back to the office. And I think what you're seeing today from the panelists is there's a lot of different options, but it's going to be really key to just evaluate how you work and how your team works to see what practices make the most sense for you.
I want to build on that a little bit in terms of, some other structural things or other dimensional qualities to kind of going back to work. So how do we deal with the social and the emotional impact of being apart and then coming back together? What does that look like in terms of making sure that people are accommodated psychologically for going back into that situation? And what are some coping mechanisms or some remediation mechanisms we can use to make that re-entry or I guess re-onboarding into the mix? What does that look like? How do we do that successfully? What are some thoughts on that directed at Julie, Nola, and others?
From a re-entry standpoint, what we're trying to do is be pretty transparent about kind of our processes, how we're bringing people in, and why. So I think that's one of our biggest keys is the communication piece of it. We also are doing an employee survey where employees can send it back to their manager and talking about how things are going, working at home, how they're feeling about the situation, anything that they want to share, any engagement questions, concerns that they have, recommendations, and we will kind of update that as we get closer to coming back, because we know that the questions from how they feel today working remotely in some of those cases is going to feel different about how do you feel coming back, especially in a time when maybe the pandemic isn't completely over. It's just waning a little bit and we don't know what the future will look like with it coming back. So that's what we're doing, is we're just kind of monitoring their engagement now, and then we'll monitor it when they come back as well on what we can do.
I would add to what Julie said is also providing sort of some updates on resources that you have available. If you have an employee assistance program, making sure that employees know where they can get that assistance from, how they can call that, you know, any other resources that you might have available at your company, and just reminding them that this is a tough time. I think being empathetic during this time is really important, and, you know, telling your employees you understand that, you know, yes, work productivity is important to us, but you're important to us too. And we want to make sure that you are mentally and physically and emotionally healthy.
Great. I had a question from Stephanie. What are the ideas on bringing people back in teams so there isn't an overlap in the teams? So are there different people there each week, or are there different ways of ordering that? What is sort of staggering approach look like? What are some best practices around bringing people back in? Again, just building on that idea of onboarding and how reintroduction into the workplace, what does that look like? So any of the panelists.
I can take a shot at this. This is Brandon, and pass it off to anybody else. But we're definitely working now to evaluate that for different groups, whether they're in a call center situation, they're in an IT development, they used to work in an agile, very close together, whiteboarding, moving around, to your typical office worker, et cetera. And I think what we're finding is that each business has different teams and different ways teams work. So it becomes a very detailed study to see how this will work. But most of the groups we're working with would like to at least implement some form of reentry in that team form, whether it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday group and a Tuesday, Thursday group that rotates with some of the cleaning that the service master guys just talked about every night, or it's a weekly team, and then the next week the other team comes in and they work from home, and there's some rotation there with the right cleaning practices. So that's a great question. I know we're planning to do that at Shift, and I know most of our customers are doing some form of a reentry based on either a portion of the teams working at a period of time and then switching, or different groups and operational groups within the company, depending on the size, coming in on those off days. So that's one way you can do it. But you need to make sure you have the good communication plan. You need to make sure that you have the right cleaning and the right metrics there to share what you're doing to make sure when folks come in that it's been sanitized and cleaned, and you're good to go. As good as you can be, I guess I should say. You should never promise anything.
All right. So with just a little over 5 minutes left, the last question, and this is a question that I think is extremely relevant because I've been working with a lot of my clients on this specifically. How can organizations maintain their culture when more and more people are working from home and people are in the office less and less? So how do you do that? How do you make sure that people stay positive, people feel connected? There was a comment earlier from one of the panelists about the collaboration being less. So what are some mechanisms or ways that people can stay in touch with each other, not just to do the operational productive things, but also just feeling connected to one another, feeling like we're on a team? What are some things people can do? What have you seen? What have you read about? What are some things that just reinforce a positive culture while all this is going on?
Yes, one of the things that I'm working with on some of our marketing team right now is just really kind of having that thought for the reason that we're having this call today is, what do we feel like the future is going to look like, and how can we pivot built around, what the next, 6 months, year, or 2 years may potentially look like, and how can we pivot to be able to support people that way. So we'll just kind of get into a Zoom meeting like this and just kind of discuss and throw everything against the wall and see what sticks at everybody's opinion, because I don't think there's necessarily a right answer.
I agree with that, Cole. We're leveraging a lot of social networking and virtual meetings and virtual lunches and virtual coffees, virtual happy hours. I mean, everything's kind of a virtual right now, unfortunately. But I think the key is to make sure that the folks setting up the meetings and the leadership group or the manager or their ownership, whoever it is, leads by example. Make sure they have their monitor on, make sure they're participating, make sure they're showing that this meeting is important, making sure they're trying to interact with the team. When that doesn't happen, I think those meetings can be less impactful. So that's a tip we've learned, and we're seeing definitely using the different IT tools, whether it's Teams or the G Suite or Slack, or there's a lot of these other applications that you can use to work together and hopefully provide better productivity. I think it's great to continue to be involved in the community and support the nonprofits that you have. So if your company can continue to do that in a virtual way or find ways to organize an event that still falls within the social distancing, whether that's a food drive or a fundraiser, I think those are all great things. And I would say also, as soon as you can get back to the office, really trying to maximize that, again, face-to-face time.
This is Julie. What we've done is we've really ramped up our communications piece of it. So we're sending out a lot more information on various things that we probably have in the past. And on the flip side, we're also increasing our feedback mechanisms. So asking the employees, how is this going? How can we make it better? How can we support you? So those have really gone up a lot in our organization. And another thing that I've seen some of our employees and our departments doing is changing the frequency of conversations, whereas before they might have met every other week for an hour or 2 hours, they're now maybe meeting twice a week for a half an hour so that they have more touches and don't feel like there's a big gap, because we're losing that day-to-day interaction where we might have just been able to walk over to somebody's desk. So changing the frequency of those meetings, that's been something I've seen happen as well.
This is Nola. I'd like to sort of bounce off Brandon a little bit. I really do think that, you know, leadership or culture comes from the top. And so the more you can get your leaders engaged and, you know, continuing whatever type of culture you might have, using all of the different virtual methods, what other people have said, in order to, I think, create as many of the situations that you would have in the office as you can. I mean, you're not going to be able to recreate everything, but if you can recreate the weekly meeting and, you know, like Julie said, increase the frequency of that because you don't have as many days off. We have one partner in our office who is sending daily quarantine emails for the skeletal crew, and he's sort of the jokester in the firm. And so it sort of, you know, gives people that, and at one point he said, now I'm stuck doing it because if he hasn't sent it, the staff are emailing him to ask where the daily email is. And so I think just keeping some of those things up, and, you know, it's sort of easy to work from home and get in your own little groove of what you're doing and get your work done, and forget that other people still exist. But I think to the extent possible that we can still do the things that we would do if we were in the office, I think that that's really going to be important in maintaining the culture while we're out of the office, and I think will help the transition back to the office.
Yeah, just to expand on that a little bit, we really encourage the use of using video cameras and turning those on. You know, otherwise, without those on, it's no different than a typical phone call or a conference call that you'd have, and you're not getting that interaction of seeing people's face, you know, their reaction when you throw an idea out and how they might like it or not like it. And so having that ability to see them and see how people are reacting, I think, is a really important thing in understanding just how people feel and what they want to, how they want to participate in the conversations.
Kind of piggyback on what Andy was saying, one thing that we've kind of encouraged staff to do is to, you know, after you're having a conversation, you know, via web meeting or telephone call with staff about, you know, business, you know, make sure you interject some of that, you know, water cooler talk, you know, just to check on people's sanity, make sure everything's going okay. If people haven't been in the office for weeks, you know, just having that regular, you know, water cooler talk with other employees is important to maintain the culture.
Yeah, asking them what they did on the, you know, the weekend prior to, or you know, just whatever the case may be, because that still happens, or you want that happen to still happen because it was part of what you were doing previously.
Well, we're at about 5 o'clock now, so I want to wrap us up, but I want to thank all of our panel. I'll turn this back over to Jeff to kind of make some closing remarks, but I want to thank our panelists for all the really great information and insights, and I'm sure they'd be happy to type in their contact information in the chat window and be available for one-on-ones or follow-ups or virtual coffees and happy hours. I'm all for virtual happy hours, so definitely do that. But again, my name is Joe Banish. I'm with the Ingenuity Company. I just want to thank everybody for being here today. Thank you for your time. I hope everybody is safe and healthy, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this. And again, I think we had a really great discussion today. So just thanks again, everybody. And don't hesitate to reach out to me, or if I can be of service to you or anything like that. So thanks again.
Thanks a lot, Joe. Really appreciate the time you took today to help lead this panel, and had some great conversation with everybody. I did want to take this opportunity to thank some of our sponsors. The STIG series is brought to us monthly by Terracons, is our premier sponsor. We also have gold sponsors, City of Des Moines, Ritma Properties, the Iowa Architectural Foundation, Mid-American Energy Partners, and also supported by American Marketing, Confluence Inc., Epic Studio, Hanson Company, Newman Brothers Inc., and Tri-City Electric. So we are, as you can imagine, we do these events monthly. We have a full summer packed of events ahead of us, and the COVID-19 has thrown kind of a loop in our schedules and plans, but we are meeting to figure out what we're going to do for May. It looks like it'll likely be a virtual event of some kind. So if you have any ideas, by all means, please forward those on to the DIG committee. That could be myself or Jennifer or Sheila on the call here. We'd be happy to entertain any ideas you have. And then, so I just wanted to close with a comment. A lot of us are very thankful right now and grateful that we are busy. Many of us continuing to work from home, have what we call essential jobs, but keep in mind there are a lot of folks in our downtown community that are not doing so well or struggling a little bit, particularly those restaurants. So one thing Terracon is doing, we're trying to take the time to use our employee recognition budget to reward some staff that are working hard by giving them some gift cards to restaurants and such. And I think that's a great way to try to show some support for the downtown community. So something to consider. And really appreciate everybody's time today. Wanted to leave you on that note. And have a great day, everybody. And take care. We'll see you soon.